Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Sandwich of Coherency. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this. I know everybody has heard all the talk about the idea of a universal basic income and the government guaranteeing funds for everybody, no matter what your walk of life is, no matter what your qualifications are, no matter what your background is, no matter whether or not you want to work. Now, that sounds all fine and dandy, but as I've said before about this, and you're going to have to work. And, I wanted to expand on that idea. You're going to have to work regardless. The whole idea of a universal basic income is to ensure that you have to work. Now, the reason I say that is because it's going to create a tiered system. So you're going to have people guarantee that work in certain particular fields who will have one level of pay, and you'll just scale it down from that. So let's say you don't want to do anything. Well, yes, you'll get the basics provided for you, and they will set a level. The government will set a level of what is basic, and there will be incentives to get more for you to work for the government. So work for the government, go into this field, go into that field. Now, I think what will end up happening is you'll have a private public sector partnership. So like you have with housing, where the government guarantees the funds for those corporations or individual landlords that are willing to allow the government to use their property, you will have the government doing the same with pay. So you say you have a company like Walmart enters into a partnership with the federal government, guaranteeing every employee gets the same rate of pay, regardless. Doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter what your background is. You'll be getting that same rate of pay. And because it's guaranteed by the government, the probability is that the companies themselves will be only required to pay a certain percentage of it. The government will guarantee the rest to ensure that there's equity and diversity. And that in itself will create less incentive for the company to invest in the company. There will be no requirement to invest in paying employees higher rates for working harder or being better employees, because they're only responsible for X amount and the government covers the rest. The employee will be able to be replaced at any point if the employee becomes non-viable, because they'll be guaranteed workers. And I think it's all going to happen because of this idea of 15-minute cities, because infrastructure has to be built. If you're going to create the idea of a 15-minute city, the infrastructure has to be built. It has to be set up to accommodate all things that they think the government will set a basic level of what they think you need, which means then we have to find ways to keep it going. So we'll have these incentives. Guaranteed income. If you do this, you're guaranteed this rate of pay no matter what, regardless. And that's going to create a tiered system. In these 15-minute cities, people think it's all going to be all encompassing of everything, but you will probably be split based on rankings of what your employment and what your necessity to the overall system is. I really think that's really something to think about, because this general idea that people are just not going to have to do anything, people have this very utopian idea that none of us will have to work and everything will just continue to magically appear. Things have to be created, so somebody's going to have to do the work, and it's either going to be machines, which they're slowly developing to do that work, or it's going to be humans that become new slaves to the government. So, that's just part one of that. But then you got this idea of forced diversity and that nonsense look, diversity and inclusion and whatnot is all fine and dandy. That's a good thing. We should include everybody to be a part of something, but this forcing it, you know, is just getting ridiculous. So the idea, and let's watch this video real quick.
But I want to take the opportunity to lay out how diverse the president's cabinet has been, how diverse the president's administration has been. The cabinet is majority people of color for the first time in history. The cabinet is majority female for the first time in history. A majority of White House senior staff identify as female. 40% of White House senior staff identify as part of the racially diverse communities. And a record 7 assistants to the presidents are openly LGBTQ+.
Okay.
So
Now, I mean, you've heard it from the White House press secretary herself. The president just signed this whole bill or whatnot, executive order, whatever it was, about forcing equity and whatnot into all aspects of government and all this whatnot. And here's the thing, okay? All those people she just listed and all this, she just threw them all under the bus. Let's be honest with ourselves. This current administration is trash, okay? This is not just people on the right saying it. This is people on the left, the right, and the middle. Everybody is, at this point, accepted the fact that the current administration is garbage. They've done a terrible job. You look at the price of fuel throughout the United States, the energy prices increased, the cost of food, everything, is completely falling apart. You look at the United States standing in the rest of the world, it is absolute trash. Currently, really, nobody respects the United States. The United States just got punked by another country with balloons or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Let's call it for what it is. So the reason I say they've thrown all these people under the bus is because the administration says they hired based on identity, not on merit. People were given positions based on how many boxes they checked. The current White House press secretary, when they rolled her out, again, they didn't roll her out to you by stating her accomplishments, the things she's done in her life to get her to that position where she's at to be the White House press secretary. No, they let you know how many boxes she's checked. She's black, gay, and something. That is where we are at right now. So, honestly, the reality is this is going to open people's eyes and hopefully get them to come back to reality and say, hey, instead of doing this, why don't we pick the best person for the job? If there are not enough particular types of people that are qualified to do this job, why don't we do things to help encourage people to go into those fields so they can do those jobs and be good at those jobs? So when these positions come up, there's more diversity of actual people qualified for the positions they are applying for, and not just based off how many social boxes that they check, because it has been an absolute failure. And let's understand, we have the whole Equal Opportunity Employment Act and whatnot, which states you're not allowed to discriminate based off of gender identity, ethnicity, religion, and all these other factors, okay? Yet the premise of the current administration is to literally openly state that they discriminate based on these particular factors. We have companies rather, throughout the United States that openly state we are hiring and we are discriminating based on these factors. People are calling for discrimination in housing based on these factors. Do you understand that when people like Pete Buttigieg says, there's too many white people in construction? If you feel that way, which I think is very odd, because this is not considered to be a racist statement. This is a real, true statement. Anybody who's been on a construction site at any point notices that there's mostly Latinos working on construction sites. This is not a racist statement. This is just means that they are good at what they do, so they get hired more. And why is that? Because there's more of them that do it. And it's just a fucking reality. What construction sites has this guy been on? Now, is he talking about things like oil rigs and things like that? And if you're like thinking of something like that, then I would say that maybe you should do things to encourage more people in different communities to look into those type of jobs. You know, not everybody knows about everything. And depending on what region of the United States you live in, certain things are not really brought up. You know, like oceanography. Oceanography is probably not a huge priority in the educational base of landlocked states. Why? Because access to the ocean is fucking limited. That's literally just how it works. So, I mean, the whole point I'm trying to get at is that we really do need to bring ourselves back to reality and understand that discrimination is illegal. But the way they treat it is that discrimination is okay if we're doing it virtuously. No, it's still illegal. And the simple fact that you have companies that are openly stating that they are performing these practices, I feel anybody who loses out on a position can really run the argument, depending on who the company is, that that's why it happened. You should be allowed to do that because they openly stated that's what they're doing. So that's just my take on that little bit.